Okay, so the question was asked how I go through this process of creating the things for 3D print, so I thought I would kind of record what I'm doing here. Apologize for the lighting. My ring light died, so yeah, it is what it is. So I start off using NetFab, and I have the private version of it, meaning I paid for it, but I think the public version does pretty much everything. I've also set in NetFab the parameters of my machine. That's optional, but this gives me a good view of how much space I have on the board when I'm working with the print. So first thing we need to do then is import the model, and we're going to use Urestrin here. And that, let's see, let me go back one. That is Urestrin without the base. So let's put in the one with the base. Here's the original. So this is as downloaded from HeroForge. And I'm going to move it to Platform Center for me to work with. Now, if the model is the scale that you want it to be, you're good to go. Just go ahead and start working on the process. But in this case, we want to scale this just a little bit because Urestrin is size 13, which is just like 1 inch to 2 inches bigger, taller than somebody whose average height of 5'8". So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my reference character. I can find him here. Except I can't find him. Oh, here he is. Okay, so this guy represents basically an average person, and he's in this pose that allows him to get his full height. And of course, obviously, you know, the Urestrin's going to be a little bit shorter. The model will be a little bit shorter than it appears because she's leaning forward just a little bit here. And for comparison then, we will compare that to Finric, who is of average height. And that's Finric. Okay. Now the problem that we have is if we're going to scale these, obviously Urestrin needs to be made a little bit bigger, but if we're going to scale these, then it would also scale the base, and we don't want that. So, and here comes the garbage truck. Oh, that's okay. So I'm going to show you how to delete the base off of here, how to cut it off. So we're going to close the move tool, and so you go to Modify, Free Cut, Plane Cut, and then just click here. And then we want this to be horizontal, so I'm going to make all the angles 0. And we don't actually need it to be this big, so I'm going to make it 10. It's probably too small. Let's make it 20. I'm just printing something in the background here, but okay. And so what we want to do then is position this so that everything is stretching through. I'm going to make that even bigger. Let's make it 50. There, that'll be fine. I have it checked so that only the selected parts are going to get cut. So going into top view here, I'll center this, not strictly necessary, but I'm going to center it there. Then I'm going to look from the left, and then here's the key. You want to bring this down so that it's directly underneath her feet. So I'm going to move it in 0.01 millimeter increments. So 0.01. And so then I'm just going to move it down. And if you've got her clicked, then you can move her down until you start to see the base appearing. You see that like that? So I'm going to go up just a little bit. Make sure that that's kind of at the bottom of the books. Might go down a little bit more. That's probably too much. Okay, so let's go there. Okay, and you see I'm going to have a little bit extra here sticking up, but I'm going to show you how to get rid of that in just a second. So once you're happy with that, then you click Cut. And now I've got it in 2 pieces. So I'm going to move Urestrin up just a little bit. I'm going to move the figure up just a little bit. And I'm going to actually type in a number so that I can get it back down exactly where I want it to be. And so you can see here, we've got these little bits that should be on the base. So I'm going to do modify, and I'm going to split shells into parts. Now your estrin, the books, and all those little pieces are actually all different. They're all different pieces. So I'm going to select the books and the figure, and then I'm going to, don't need to be so accurate about how high I move it, but I'm just going to move it up another 10. So that I can highlight all of this stuff down here. And then we moved it up 10, so I'm going to move it down -10 so that it goes back to where it's supposed to be. Okay, so then all I need to do is click on this so that all of that is selected. We'll close this. And modify, merge selected parts, and I've repaired the base. Now, unfortunately, there's no way around the fact that these pieces are cut out. Your only alternative here would be to leave part of the books and leave part of the shoes, which I've found is not a good solution. So I've got the base separated here. Always move things in top view, that way you can keep it relative to where it needs to be. Alright, so I'm going to group all of these together. Actually, no, I'm not, because we don't want to scale the books. So let's bring that down. So I'm going to move, and then we need to bring this down -20. Oops, that was too far. -10, or +10. Okay, I'll just move it. For now, it doesn't matter much. So I'm just going to put it down kind of close. And you can have it drop to the platform, and that'll actually have it line up like that. Okay. So now we have a little bit better idea of how this should look. Oh, you know, it just occurred to me, I probably want to keep the books on here since I'm not going to scale those. So Control Z is undo. And I'm just going to step all the way back. And then I'm going to bring these books down. There. So that I'll keep the base the same since she's going to go back under a regular base. So now I'll highlight all of that, and I will merge that into one piece. So modify, merge selected parts. You don't need to keep the other parts. So this is now one piece. Whoops, I did keep the other parts. I didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. So now there's the base and the books are the same. So we'll bring the restaurant down to the platform, and we want to scale. And you see that even though she's, you know, hunched, she's in a pose, she's still a little too short. And if you do the math, she should come out to be about 35 millimeters tall, but that's hard to guesstimate with the fact that she's not in a straight up and down pose. So why don't we, let's close this, we're going to go to scale, and we can't type in a number directly because her axe is actually determining the height, but what we can do is we can do a percentage. And so I'm going to try, so be about, if she's size 13 and Finrick is size 12 and this figure is size 12, then that's about 103%. So I'll do 103% and we'll apply that. And then again, I'm going to move her back up to the platform because she's a little bit below. So let's put in Finrick, and let's put in your TARDIS, who is actually size 11, so should be a little bit shorter. And so Finrick should be kind of halfway in between these two, like this. So let's go to top view so we can arrange things a little bit here. By the way, to move things around, you hold down the Control key, move you laterally. If you don't have and laterally with the right mouse button down. If you want to rotate then around that point, use just the right mouse button. And then you can center view here to get everything to rotate around here. So I'm going to go to top, scroll wheel zooms out, And let's just move them around so that Fenric is kind of in the middle. And we'll move the reference figure over just a little bit too. Okay. So now you see that she still might be a little bit short. If that's her head, that she and Fenric are in pretty much the same pose, and she should be a little bit taller. So let's scale that. Close this. Scale. And we'll try another 103%. That might be a bit much. I'm going to change her display color so that she's the same color as the others. That'll make it a little easier to compare. So we'll make her, it's kind of a dark gray. Yeah, close enough. Okay. So now looking at her, you see she might be a little bit tall because I've already scaled her TARDIS, and Fenric is taller than he is. She should be about the same amount. So what we're going to do is we're going to scale her down, and we'll go to, let's do like 99%. We can just keep applying it until she works out to be about where she should be. Just going to guesstimate with the feet here. That's still a little bit tall, so let's go down one more. No, that's too much. Okay. All right, so let's put her on the platform. And that seems about right. There we go. Okay, so now we've got the figure scaled, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape size-wise. Now, the other problem that we have is, you see this little triangle here. This says, hey, this has holes in it. It's not ready for printing. So I try to do them separately. I will do the base separately from the mini, because when I print them, I don't print them with the base. I like to use the flat, clear acrylic bases. But repairing in NetFab is really easy. You got to prepare, run repair script, and just do the extended repair. And see, now it's filled in, the little red parts are gone. And so that means that this is healed and ready for printing. So we're going to do the same thing to your estrin. So prepare, run repair script, extended repair, execute. And now you see it's gone. So that means that they are ready for printing. So I am keeping, because Dave also wants them not on the bases. So I am making a version without the base and then a version with the base. So I'm going to export this. You need to export as an STL. Do it as a binary, not as an ASCII, because not every program can read an ASCII STL. So I'm going to do a binary STL. This means that it's not optimized, but you can optimize it, but it's not really going to make any difference, and it's not going to make any difference when you're printing either. In theory, this slows it down a little bit, but I have not noticed that it does. It slows down the slicing of it a little bit, but I've not noticed any difference. All right, so this is the minis without base. So I'm just going to replace your estrin here. And there we go. All right. And just for my own reference, I'm gonna export this base too, even though I'll probably never print the base on its own. And we'll call this your estrin book base. Okay. So the next thing we need to do then is to get her back on her base. So we've got to move. And you really kind of have to just eyeball it. But because you can zoom in on here really close, we can get it pretty darn close. And especially since I've still got the kind of footprints there. This is one reason why I was glad that most of the figures had kind of the stone base, the rock base, because then the footprints don't really matter. You can get rid of those. So you see, even though she's scaled, she's a little bit bigger. And so we should be able to make it so that those footprints are more or less covered up. Her stance is obviously going to be a little bit wider. So there's only going to be so much that we can do with that. Everybody say hi, Nita. Okay, and that looks pretty good. All right, so next thing we need to do is combine these back into one figure. So I'm going to click on both of these. And we go to modify, merge selected parts. We don't need to keep the old part. See, I remove old part. Yes, I think last time it said keep old part or something. I was paying attention. Okay, so now we've got a single model. Still don't have the exclamation point triangle down here, so we're good. We're ready for printing. So we're going to export that part. And I'm going to call that Urestry with base. And we will, I'll go back down. There we go. Okay. So that's how you would manipulate the figures. Now, if you didn't need to manipulate the figures, you don't need to do that. You know, if it downloaded straight up and you're ready to go, there's no reason to sit there and mess with it. However, one of the things that I have done, actually, let me bring it back. This picture, this Fenric, he actually had a different head. This is the model from the one where he's wearing the leather cap. And then I actually cut the head off of the model where he was kind of in a more guarded pose, carrying the trident and the net from that. But I decided I liked the picture of him without the leather cap on. So I just cut that off and then put this one back in. Now, anytime you do that, you're likely to have some extra triangles kind of sticking out where you don't want them. And if you look very closely, that's actually true here. If I can find where it was, I actually did a pretty good job on this one, but there it is right there. So you see that I've got just like some extra triangles. That's not going to show up in the print, really. You're not going to see that. But if you really wanted to, you can get rid of that too. So I'm just going to show you how to access it, but you go to prepare and then repair part. That puts you in where you can see the triangles. And what you want to do is you want to do the primitive triangles. And now you can get in and you can select individual triangles like this and delete out the ones that you want, that you don't want. You can also you can select whole surfaces, things like that. Remember that every model is two-sided. So there's, even if it's one triangle, there's an inside and an outside of that triangle. So if I were to delete this for some reason, I would still have the inside of that triangle. So I'd have to delete the other side of that as well. But if sometimes when you're cutting off a base, for example, you'll have little pieces sticking out from the foot that are connected. So then you just highlight those triangles and you get rid of them and you're good to go. Okay, I am going to cancel this because we don't go change that. But other things that you can do, the trident was too long and too thick. So I actually cut off on that model, I actually cut it off right here at the hand and then scaled it to where everything could be the way I wanted it and then attach that piece back to that. I was also able to take like the net, which in Hero Forge they don't have a net, they've got just a rope. So I took the net, I cut that off, duplicated just the net, shrunk it down to fill in the hole in the rope with that other piece of rope, you know, the duplicate of the piece that I cut out, and it made a nice little net, combat net that he's holding. So you can do all kinds of little modifications with this. All right, so we're going to get rid of the reference figure here, and let's go ahead and get the base version, the version with the base is ready for printing. So I'm going to go to top, and we're going to go ahead and move mode so that I can move these around. All right, and we have to make sure, the reason why I like to have my machine dimensions in here is this way I can be sure that I'm going to fit inside the boundary of the printer. So let's go ahead and add the rest of the parts. So we need Aerith, we need TARDIS, Lars, and Brandeth. And Aerith needs some repair, so we'll have to look at that. I thought I had actually already repaired it, so we'll take another look at that. So I'm going to separate these guys out, kind of get them arranged on the bed the way we want it. And let's rotate him so his sword kind of fits in between. I'm going to rotate Astrid. She's kind of sticking in right there. And TARDIS needs to go back to make sure he's not hanging off the edge. I think his hand may be a problem. Let's rotate it a little bit. There we go. Okay, and so that's veranda. Where is Aerith? Is it? Oh, here's Aerith. Okay, so apparently Aerith had an issue. So let's run the repair script on him just to be sure. So we'll run the repair script, extended repair, let it do its thing. And it's gone, so that fixed it. Okay, so just so that I make sure that I've actually done that, I'm going to go ahead and export just him. And he goes in Aerith with base, so we'll save over the old one that apparently was not repaired. Okay. So looking down on this, it looks to me like pretty much everybody is going to fit. So let's move things around just a little bit. Okay. And that looks pretty good. So let's get all of these. So to print them all at once, it has to be a single model. It can't print multiple models at once. But fortunately, that's really easy. All we need to do is select them all, and then go down to Modify, Merge Selected Parts. We'll get rid of the old parts. And now they're one piece. So I'm going to export this and save over the one that I already did. With yellow. It's still thinking. Okay, and we're going to call this RuneQuest group with base. Alright, so while I'm here, I am going to go ahead and do the ones without bases. So let's add to parts. And we stored those here, so I'm just going to highlight them all. Oops, not that. That. Okay, so we're going to have to fix Aerith and Lars. Lars, I was actually not... I think it's Ramcat who actually has the problem. But I don't think it's severe enough that it's going to matter, so I think I'm going to try printing it anyway. But, so let's get these guys spread out a little bit. Probably move a little bit more towards this end. There's no inherent reason to have them spread out. It just makes it a little bit easier to cut off the support material. You know, because you've got less issues with removing, you know, accidentally cutting into somebody else, things like that. All right, so let's run the script on Aerith. Okay, and he's good. Let's see, is this the scale version next to it or not? I'm not sure. I'm gonna put her next to Finnick and see what that looks like. No, I think that's the short one. She should be taller than that. I'm not sure I saved it in the right place. That's with the base. I think I did. Yeah, I guess she's taller than me. Okay, alright, we're good. Let's get her positioned again. Okay. Now I'm going to try to run the script one more on on Lars, but apparently it was, I'm going to try a little bit different script here. Let's try doing this default repair. I don't actually see any holes, so I'm not sure what it's choking on. We'll have a way of verifying whether this will actually print or not in just a second. Okay, so script ran, didn't seem to make any difference. Okay, so we're going to go with it. Alright, so next thing then is to get them all combined. So, and then we're going to merge them. So modify, merge selected parts, get rid of the old part. There we go. And we're ready to export. The lighting has totally shifted in here now. Can't actually see much at all from here. Oh well. That's going to blind me, so we're not going to do that. Okay. Alright, so we're going to say this is just our key group. And we're good. So at this point we are done with, get this out of the way. So we are done now with NetFab, so I'm going to close that. And I need to save the project. So the next step then is we need to get the support material for it. Basically all the hard stuff's done. Everything else now is just purely mechanical. So I use process slicer because I have never had it fail with support. I have never had a fail print using this. With every other method I've used, I've had fail prints. So we're going to load, let's do the one without bases first. So we will do this one, and it's our key group. And I've also put in the parameters for the print bed so that I can make sure that everything still works here. And then down here, this will automatically generate the support points. So you click auto generate points, and I've never had to do anything other than auto generate. And you see down here, it's going to slice it. And it'll take a while, particularly since these are pretty high res models. So there's 200,000 triangles in each one. Okay, so we're done. That took about 5 minutes or so. Usually what I do is I start a slicing and I just walk away, and I'll come back later on. But you can see that it has raised the figures about, I believe it's about 5 millimeters off the ground for that. Support material with an SLA is not a problem. A lot of times, with a filament printer and FDM printer, you're trying to avoid that. But in this case, because it can make those supports so tiny, you can actually get those off fairly easily, and often you don't even leave anything behind. Sometimes there'll be a little bump that you might have to get in there with your fingernail and pop off, something like that. But it's nowhere near as difficult as it is with an FDM printer. So also notice that its prints, it kind of blends everything together into this kind of raft down here. As I was saying, just the feet are not going to stick to the bed. So there's like no chance that that's going to do it. And even if it did stick, as soon as you tried to pry them off, you're going to break the foot. So it's one way or the other. You're never going to get it right. So this way, what you can do is you get in there and you just scrape underneath the little support or underneath the little raft there, and the whole thing will just pop right off. Then I use some side cutters to get in there and cut, and then most of the time I just pull this off with my fingers. I don't even have to really cut to get any of the support pieces off here. So when you're doing supports, the key thing is that you don't want any islands. You can't have anything horizontal, because if I have two things that are printing and this is just printing out in the air, with an FDM printer you can kind of bridge across, and you can still get it to print. You can't do that with an SLA printer, with a resin printer. It's impossible. So this will just drop down into the vat, and it just won't work. So we're going to check that a little bit later with a verification program. But so you can see that this sword here, process says it's going to be fine because it's going up at this angle. But if he was going straight across like his arm is, he's got to have support for that. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay, so the reason why I use Pressa here is because it's one of the only ones that will let you export with the supports. So I'm going to export plate, including supports. And then my code for this is I do dash support so that I know which model is the base model, which I want to keep for later on, and which is the support, which I'm not actually going to keep for very long. This is really just an intermediate thing, and so it says it's exported. So at this point, we're done. I am going to go ahead and delete that, and if we wanted to, we could actually do the bases. So I'm going to import this one, just with the bases, the RQ group with base. And you see that we can do the same thing on here. Okay. The problem that we're going to have with this, and it's not going to be too bad, but it will be a little bit. Do you see that this is actually raised up and it's flat? So your only options really are to either have support material under that you're just going to have to dig out, but it's not going to give you a nice flat piece on the edge here if it's raised up. So no matter how much support material you do in here, it's going to drip in between. And so the only thing you can do is like, just run across sandpaper or something like that. So printing on bases doesn't work very well. You've got two options. You can either tilt all the characters so that now you're not printing anything flat, so the character's coming off this way. Something I'm going to try here is what we can do is we can try to not raise it. I'm hoping that maybe this will be enough that I can actually get it to stick to the bed and then scrape it off. So I'm going to try a print like this, and if it doesn't work, then I'll just go back to printing them tilted like I usually do. So let's see. So we're going to do print settings, supports, and we're generating the support. And I've got to find where it actually, here it is, object elevation right here. So we're going to make that 0. Okay. Oh, and we need to pad around the figure. Okay, I have not tried to do this before, obviously. Where's the pad? Here it is. There we go. Okay. So we're going to pad around the figure, go back to the plate, let it auto-generate the points. And I'll probably cut out here again while we're waiting for this to go. There's no sense in staring at the screen for 5 minutes. Okay, that one actually was really complete, really fast. That was only like 3 seconds. Notice it's giving you a little bit of a warning that parts of this are extending out beyond the print bed. That could conceivably be a problem because it's not going to be able to print the second half of this. So we may end up wanting to scoop that in a little bit. Yeah, I don't know that that one's actually going to fit by the time we're done. So we've got the model on there, but not the support base for that. So we may come back to that and look at that. But for now, let's go ahead and export what we have. I'm going to look at the supports. So with base and support. Okay, and so with that, we are done with the process slicer, so we can go ahead and close that. And I'm going to discard the changes because I don't want to modify my print settings. This is basically the default. I don't really want to change any of the auto settings there. So then the next step is to load up Cheetah Box. Cheetah Box is what's going to produce the model or the instructions for the printer itself. And so this is similar to what an FDM printer does, but it does it in the format that an SLA or a resin printer can actually do. So let's go ahead and open the file. And we want to do the regular minis, and we'll do RQ group with supports. And you see that I've also got in the size of the printer so that I can verify that everything is going to fit inside the print, and so we're good. So for settings, this is actually just where I set it in the machine diagram. This is just to allow you to calculate the cost of the resin and how much resin you're actually going to use. This is the only one that really matters. And it's beautiful because it's a lot simpler settings than slicing with, say, with an FDM printer or something. So what I always do, I do a 60-second bottom exposure time. It's exposing to that UV, and you really need that cured very, very well, very strong. That's what's making it stick to that plate. So you need a long exposure time for those first 5 layers then, and each layer is 0.5 millimeters. So 2.5 millimeters, not that much. We're doing 60 seconds for each one. And then I've found with the resin that I use, with the bio resin, 10 to 15 seconds is usually best. I think the range they list is from 8 to 15. 10 seems to work fine. And so the shorter this is, the faster it's going to print, but at the same time, you want it to get hardened enough so that it doesn't, drip a little bit, and then you just kind of sag some of the detail on there. I don't put any light off delay or anything like that. This, of course, is the layer height, but you can adjust, and you can go down to 0.01 easily. I find that to be a bit overkill. 0.05 millimeters, 5 micron printing is going to be fine. Infill, I don't do any infill at all. I will often hollow out big models that I don't have to worry about it. And anti-aliasing, because you're using a cell phone screen, basically. It's straight off of a cell phone. So it's pixels. And you can apply anti-aliasing to smooth that. But honestly, printing at this resolution, I have never seen anti-aliasing make a difference for that. So we'll leave those as is. And we'll go ahead and slice it. Almost done. Slicing time too long? Well, yeah, but whatever. Okay, so we could preview it here. I really never mess with that. I find that unlike my FDM printer, this time is actually pretty close. The reason for that is it's moving. The only time on the motor is just to go on the Z-axis. There's no time calculations for moving around in X and Y. And because it's just a single screw for the Z-axis, it's pretty accurate for that. And then you're just exposing for 60 seconds for the first 5 layers, then 10 seconds for the rest of it. So it's pretty easy. So we're going to save that. When I do this, I get rid of the dash support. This is the file that's actually going to be saved onto the USB drive, which I don't. Yeah, here it is. So this is the USB stick that came with it. This is what I store all my printable models on. I'm just going to put it on the desktop for now because I don't keep this. The little dash, I don't know why that's there, but I leave that, it puts it automatically. I leave that there just so that I know that this Cheetah Box slicer file is one that's ready to be printed, so I'll save that. Okay, so it's finished. We've got a successful write, and I'm going to close this. Now there's one last thing that you want to check. And so I use the Photon file validator. Photon is another type of resin printer. Occasionally, Cheetah Box will export a file that for some reason only has the very first layer in it and nothing else. So what this technically is for, you open the file and find our Cheetah Box file, which is so you load this just to double check it. And what it's actually doing is it's looking for islands. It's looking for those places where there's no support. However, I find that, it worries about things that are like 1 or 2 pixels off, and it just doesn't matter. You could, if you wanted to, you could go back and correct those errors in there, but I don't. I found that Process Slicer does such a good job that it's plenty good enough. The big thing that you're checking here is to make sure that all the layers are here. And so you can see how it's building up. Where you see these red lines intersecting, that's where theoretically there is an island, but none of these are big issues when it comes to it. So that all looks fine. So basically, as long as you don't have that error where you've only got one of the first layer, then it's going to be fine. And so we're good. So we're going to close that. So the only thing left to do then is to copy it to the USB stick, plug the USB stick into the printer, and in the next video I'll show you how we get the printer set up and how we actually do the printing.